Okay, this is Dr. Kraus with Advanced Python 3. I want to talk about how to do if-then style operations on vectors of data, and specifically introduce you to the numpy.where function. Data processing or automated data processing oftentimes involves this kind of if-then thing, and in my experience, my students sometimes get confused by trying to do if-then statements on vectors of data. There are several ways to do this in Python. Some of them are more cryptic than others. Some of them are more verbose than others. And the numpy.where function is a really powerful way to handle these things, but sometimes is a little bit confusing to students. So I want to talk through that. So topics, we're going to review for loops because I've seen on the quiz 2 that some of you are a little bit uncomfortable with the Python style for loop, and I want to talk about that. And then along with that, some ways of solving this problem would require using enumerate, and so I want to talk about that. I'll point out some common errors of using if-then on vectors, mainly just one, and then we'll go through a few NumPy indexing and slicing tricks that are kind of like the confusing or obscure or just, I don't know. They're really obvious if you know the details of NumPy, but if you're new to all of this, it seems like a really cryptic way to solve this problem. And then the where function, I think, is the most robust way to do. Robust is maybe too right. I think it's just the best compromise between making your code easy to read and not having to type in extra stuff. So we'll talk through that. This code is on GitHub, and it is specifically under the folder that says Advanced Python 3 where and if on vectors. We'll go through a handout, and then I've got some different examples that we will talk through. I think that's all I have to say about my PDF there. So I'm going to blatantly reuse a handout from last fall. A few of you were in that class, though I have it on good authority that maybe you don't remember stuff for a super long time after you take a class, especially if you don't use it, or if you weren't in the class, it'll be fine. So basically, we're going to go through exactly this. How do we do conditions on vectors? I've made up kind of a relatively simple example. But say you had a sign function, but you needed to saturate it at the absolute value has to be less. So whenever the absolute value exceeds 1.5, we want to saturate it. So basically, you have this red dotted line, and you want to generate this blue line that goes flat at positive 1.5 and flat again at negative 1.5. And so how would you do this using Python in an automated way? I do, even though we're most of the way through this course, want to pause and just kind of encourage you to think first before coding. I think one of the most common computer programming mistakes, and it's not like it leads to wrong solutions necessarily, it just leads to funny rabbit trails and less than optimal code. Don't grab a keyboard as soon as you want to solve a coding problem, but instead grab a pencil and a piece of paper, maybe. If you want to go old school, that's how we did it when I was growing up. But somehow make a list of what does the code need to do, what are the steps, and then how do I code each step in the best possible, cleanest way instead of just coding. And so along with that, like I said, modularize your code. Recognize the steps and maybe create a little helper function that does each step or whatever, and then start coding. And so I am going to deliberately pause this video and make a second video where we talk about the solutions, because I really do want you to stop for at least a few minutes and think about how would you generate the blue line. So look for part 2 momentarily.